you. All right. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I didn't, some people get a week or 2 weeks or a month's notice, and I didn't get that. I didn't get that long notice. I never do. Have you ever noticed that? It's like, oh, you can do this? Sure, I can do this. I got it. I got it. You know what I want to say is this morning's service and the songs that they were singing, Vanessa had absolutely no idea. I tried to do something else today I wanted to talk about something else and tried to do something real lighthearted and real everything. But then as Vanessa, she just started singing glory and honor. And when she did that, it changed in here. Did you notice that? To me, today, what happened today is a demonstration of what I was going to talk about. And so I want to talk to you about honor. That's what I want to talk to you about today. And I'm not going to be real serious. I'm not going to keep you real long. It won't take me long at all. But, I've had the privilege and the honor, and it was a true honor to marry into the family that I married into, to have Miss Geraldine as my mother-in-law. Many of you knew her here. You knew how she was, but I got to know her in a more intimate way by spending time with her, being around her. And I can assure you, she was every bit of what you saw and more. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for the time that I had, for the moments that we had, for the things that she shared with me, the things she spoke with me. See, some of you never got to meet Miss Geraldine. You just hear us mention her from time to time, but you didn't get to meet her. And one of the things I want to do is I want to make sure that the people that are here and were here before and knew her before, you don't forget Miss Geraldine. And I want to make sure that the people that are coming in now get a picture of who our First Lady was. She was right by Apostle David's side. She was with him from the very beginning. This place would not be here if it was not for Miss Geraldine and Apostle David. We would not have the opportunity to come in here and have someone lay their hands and God come in and reach down and touch us and heal us, restore us. We would not have that if it had not been for them answering the call. And it costs them. It costs them everything. The devil hated them, hated their family. You hear Apostle David talk about his family, what they went through, and we all go through things. But I'm going to tell you something. When you start something, when you build something from absolutely nothing, and everything around you is telling you that you cannot do that, every voice from the past is telling you that you cannot do that, all your circumstances and situations, they line up and tell you that you cannot do that. And yet they still pressed in, pushed on, and answered the call. I'm going to tell you, I have the utmost respect and honor for both of them. They are true. He is a true man of God. She is a true woman of God. And she was an example to all of us here. Anytime I had any difficulty with any situation at all, I could go and just talk to her. See, I couldn't understand anybody that ever had a problem with her. It just didn't make any sense to me. How you could have a problem with somebody who would love you and accept you just as you are. She didn't judge you. She didn't criticize you. She didn't talk about you. And she didn't do that. She honestly did not do that. And those were some of the things that I respected about her, honored, it just was an honor, and loved about her. She was a true representation. She walked in love. So she prayed. She had to. Because she had 5 children. And those 5 children were not easy. I can tell you, I know them as adults. I cannot imagine them as children. That was after Apostle David and Miss Geraldine brought correction into their life. What were they like before the correction or during the correction? I have absolutely no idea. But if you want to get an idea, you could ask Miss Barber, and she could tell you. I'm sure Miss Barber knows. Mr. Vernon knows. They know. But I'm here to tell you today, when I think about them, I was thinking about her today about this subject, and she is a person that you could put her picture next to the word honor. And what I mean by that is, I remember we had the privilege and the honor of being at their home in the morning before service. And I don't know how many of you know, in the morning, especially on a Sunday morning, you don't want to get up. How many of you know things go crazy cuckoo, especially if you have children? The night before, the day before, the week before. If it could happen, it happened. And if it could happen to them, it happened to them. What about the cow that fell in the well the night before? What about the skunk that was buried out here at the front door of the church and we walked in that Sunday morning? There's multiple times. How about the time she got her kids dressed? They went to go put on their clothes. They came out and their kids had been rolling around in the dirt. Now they got to take them to church. Keith, they probably look like they've been rolling around in a hog pen. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know what that looks like, don't you? I do too. So I'm sure there were times when she didn't, I don't know, but these were the people that they were. They were real people. They weren't fake. They're real. Apostle David is very transparent. He always has been. He tells you things that most people would never tell you. He shares things with you because he wants you to be able to identify. He wants you to know, I am a man. I have flesh. But the thing is that he is also Apostle David. And one of the things that I remember and that it really stuck with me and has always stuck with me through the years, because I watched them. I watched their relationship. And the reason I did is because I married him. And I don't know if many of you know, he is a combination of the two. He is a combination of Miss Geraldine and Apostle David. But he definitely is a combination of the two. And predominantly, there's a lot of Apostle David there. But there is that joking, kidding, all of that, like Miss Geraldine. Sneaky. That's what she was. But one of the things that I remember the most about Sunday morning, and anybody that has to get up here and minister, they understand and they know, you have to prepare yourself before you come in here. Because, see, everything's going on all through the week. You've got everything going on, and I can tell you some of the worst weeks probably that Anessa has had. She's come in here and the anointing just flowed and hit. But I guarantee you she might have had a really rough week this week. I don't know. But it sure did flow this morning, didn't it? You know why it flows like that in her life? Because she honors Apostle David. She submitted to Apostle David. And because she's submitted to the authority that's over her, the gifting and the talent and the ability that's in her can come out and flow through her, and God can use her in that area. That's why it's like that. I'm telling you, it's really not that hard. It's really simple. It's really simple, isn't it? Because she's very gifted, very talented. But gifting and talent's one thing. Anointing is something different. When people come up here, you can't go to every church and have someone lay your hands on you. It's not you. You know that, right? You know it's not the people, right? You know it's God. But we're just an instrument that he has to flow through. So we have to prepare ourselves. We have things that we have to deal with too all week long. We have to deal with things that are said to us, done to us, difficult things. We have sickness. We have family issues. We have... we have things that we have to deal with just like you do. But when we come in here, our minds can't be on that. We have to be prepared to be able to hear from God so that God can use us, so that he can flow through us, so that he can reach you, talk to you, touch you where you're at, so that when you walk out of this place, you do not go out the same way that you came in. That is our responsibility. And it's not something that we can take lightly. It's something that we have to really, we have to guard that. We have to protect that. We have to understand how important that is and don't take it for granted. That's like this morning. We cannot take this for granted. This doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen everywhere else, but it happened here today. And when we were singing that song, it brought back the memories of when Brother Roberson was here and he walked through the crowds. See, some of y'all, you didn't get to be a part of that. But we were a part of that. We saw the miracles, the signs, and the wonders. And it was on a regular basis where people who had spines that were crooked straightened up. People who had deaf ears, their ears were opened and they could hear. We heard them scream because they heard sound for the first time. How many of you were there when that happened? That was God. He honored God. He honored God. And God was able to flow through him. And as he did that, people's lives were touched and changed. People were healed. People were restored. Chains that had people bound were broken. You know, we were a mess. I was a mess when I got here. Were you a mess? I know you were a mess. But I stood, Anessa and I say this because I stood next to Anessa for 9 years on the praise and worship team. She is not the same person she was 9 years ago. But you know what? I'm not either. We're not the same people. We're different. And part of the reason we are is because of the things that we have had to overcome in our lives. The things that we've had to face in ourselves. The decisions, the choices that we've had to make. There was a line that was drawn in the sand at one time, and we had to choose. That meant that some relationships were severed and some relationships were cut off. Because we couldn't move forward with God in the direction that He wanted us to go in if we continued those relationships. You know, it's not that we didn't want that. It's just that they chose a different way. And because they chose a different way, we could not abandon the one who gave his all for us. Jesus gave it all for me. He gave it all for you. And because he gave it all, I owe him everything. That's why when I make choices and decisions every day, those choices and decisions can't be about me. Those choices and decisions have to be made according to what I believe he wants done. Because it's not about a position, it's not about a title, it's about the purpose of his kingdom going forward. There's a vision that God gave Apostle David. And he has strategically placed people and continuing to put people in those places. And they have special assignments, and they have to do those assignments. There was a time when I couldn't do what I do today. And I'm believing for the day that I can do what I do now in a much better way, much more efficient way. Because I understand I'm going to have to be able to do that. The reason I'll have to be able to do that is because it's going to continue to grow. We talk about this all the time. I looked at her the other day. I said, you do understand we're not going to be able to do this, and this. We're going to have to oversee it. We're not going to be able to do it anymore. We're going to have to let other people do it. And that's going to be hard for us. And the reason it'll be hard for us is because we have very high standards. And we're unwilling to compromise those standards or lower them to someone who doesn't understand. So we have to bring people along. We have to teach people. We have to help people to understand why we do what we do. This is why we do what we do. And we can't compromise it. We can't compromise it because there's a man and a woman who accepted a call. And they didn't compromise. And they're expecting us to hold that standard where they set it. That bar cannot be lowered because they're not here to supervise us or to oversee us and tell us that we didn't do something right. We have to maintain that standard. That's honoring them. You know, I'll go back to this now. Miss Geraldine in the mornings on Sunday mornings, David Coker is her husband. David Coker is the father of her children. David Coker was her friend. David Coker was everything to her. But come Sunday morning, David Coker was Apostle David. And she got up early in the morning, at least by 4:30 in the morning. And she prepared the atmosphere of that house so that when he got up that morning, There was no resistance. There wasn't any struggle for him. She made it just as easy and pleasant for him as she possibly could, because she understood that he had an assignment from God. And that assignment was to come into here and to share the word that God had placed in his heart and release it to the people that were here. Because there were people who needed to hear from God. There were people who were struggling with things in their family, struggling in their finances, struggling in their health. And she knew that he had that assignment. And her role, her responsibility was to provide that atmosphere for him. None of us ever saw that, but I did. She'd get up. She had the coffee ready. She had the music ready, and it was just the right, what do you call that, volume. Not too loud, not too low. He's about wore that CD. He has worn that out. He's got another CD. He's about wore that one out. But that he could hear from God. It could keep him in that place because he had to hear. You know, he's an apostle. He has a fight. He's always had a fight. He really had a fight. He tells you now he doesn't have to fight the front row like he used to have to do. And that's nice for him. He shouldn't have to. But he did for years. You know, I was watching something the other day, Eric, on YouTube. And it's a joke about YouTube. Everybody goes to YouTube. But anyway, I was on YouTube and I was watching something, and it was about a particular church, and it's about a minister that's no longer there. But they had apostolic elders. And when I was listening to him talk, it would be the new pastor of the church now. He said, we've removed all apostolic leaders from our board. It's changed the whole dynamics of that church. We no longer recognize that office. And I don't know, but it upset me. It upset me because I recognize, because of what I've been taught here and what I've heard and the understanding of the kingdom, they no longer honor that office any longer. They're going to miss out. And it won't be the same anymore. So it makes me understand that we have to be diligent about honoring what he has taught, honoring what he has shared with us all through the years. He gave his life for it. It cost him. People left him left and right. People talked about him. People said horrible things about him. People made up things about him. If you've never had anybody tell a lie on you, you ever had anybody tell a lie on you? And there's nothing you can do about it, because once people hear that, they believe it. They can't unhear what they've heard. No matter how hard they try, they cannot unhear it. I deal with it all the time. I deal with it all the time. I know what I'm talking about. And somebody will look at that. That is not true. That is not true. That is not true. Well, it doesn't matter. They believe it. They heard it. It's in their brain. It's been stamped in there. So you just have to say, God, help them, help me get through this. So I think today was a good representation. That's why I say it won't take a lot of time for me to talk about it. But I want to talk to you a little bit about honor and the importance of honor. In Matthew, if I can turn there. Where does it go? Okay. It'd be in Matthew 13, 57 and 58. And if you're wondering, I have a hard time seeing. But anyway. It says, and they were offended in him, talking about Jesus. Okay? But Jesus said unto them, a prophet is without honor, save in his own country and in his own house. And he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Now here is Jesus. He's the Son of God. He has the ability to heal everyone that comes into contact with him. Everyone. And there were hurting people. There were sick people. It didn't say Jesus didn't want to do it. It said Jesus couldn't do it. And he couldn't do it because they were so familiar with him. Isn't he? the son of Joseph? Isn't Mary his mother? Who is he to say that he can heal? Who is he to say that he can restore? Who is he? He's only the Son of God. See, he was somewhere else, and it wasn't in his hometown. It wasn't with people that were familiar with him, and it wasn't that way. He performed many miracles. Many were healed. Many lives were changed. Many things happened. This is not too far. You can go back and read a couple of chapters ahead, and you can see all of the things that Jesus did. And the reason he was able to do that is because they honored him. So what is honor? It's a high respect. You hold someone in great esteem. It's a feeling of deep admiration for someone or something. Honor is something that we don't see a lot of in our society today. You know, I was talking to one of our teachers the other day, and we were talking about how it seems we shouldn't have to, but we're having to teach kids how to sit at the table, how to use their utensils to eat, how to drink, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. We're having to teach them how to do that. And age is not, it used to be I thought it was just daycare. But see, I'm finding out it's not daycare now. It is elementary, middle school, high school. It is all of them. They don't know how. Well, I took a bunch out to eat the other day, and I realized everybody did really good. I had one that didn't. And all the rest of them were fine. And I was sitting there, and I realized, I said, okay, I'm here, and I have them for this short period of time in their life. These seem like they're not important, but this is an important life skill. Because there was a group of men that came in. And you know, men are different than women. And I was just watching them and how they interacted with each other during lunchtime. First of all, they don't sit right up under each other. You know what I'm saying? They kind of spread out a little bit because they're men. That's what they do. And they were having a conversation with each other, but they were doing it in a respectful way, but they were handling themselves quite fine. And I started looking at the group that I had, and I said, let me look at that one right there. I said, you know, he'd do fine. When he gets a little bit older, he'd be fine in that group of men. He'd be okay. He could handle himself, conduct himself well. I looked at all of the others, and I said, they'd be fine too. I looked at this one right here. I said, he'll never make it with that group right there. And I said, I got my work cut out for me, but I'm going to have to work with him. I'm going to have to help him. See, there's things in life that society now doesn't teach kids. They don't know, and honor is one of them. You know, when I grew up, and I grew up in a house, see, I am 55, so my dad was in Vietnam. So you would think that my dad raised me, but my dad didn't raise me. I wasn't raised by that generation. I was raised by a veteran of World War II, and I grew up in his home. Now, did anybody else have somebody, a dad, that was in World War II other than, okay, Grandpa? And yes, you did. Okay, that explains a lot. Okay. They're different. They're different. Honor was not a request. Honor was expected. You were taught to show honor. You were taught that it was important. You were taught to honor your mother and your father. You were taught, as a matter of fact, they didn't have a great relationship. My grandparents didn't. Oh, Lord, they didn't have a good relationship at all. I wish they had, but they didn't have one. They didn't get along. They didn't like each other. I don't even know why they got married. But they did. Well, they fought all the time, Laura. They fought all the time. But they taught us to honor our teachers, to honor the things that we had, the things that they bought us, to take care of our stuff. Don't tear it up. I'm that way now. I have dishes that I got when we got married. We've been married for 27 years. I still have those dishes. I'm not getting any new dishes. If they break, I don't get any more. I have to take care of what I have. I don't want any more. I got what I wanted. So I don't need anything else. I was taught to honor that. If we went to school and we tore up something in school, man, we were in trouble. If we talked back to my mama, we were in trouble. My mama would get us, and I'm not kidding. And even as I got older as a teenager, she didn't excuse me and say, oh, well, she's just a teenager. Oh, no, my mom would say, no, ma'am. That mouth will not work with me. You can stay home the rest of the 9 weeks, bring home every single book, stay off your phone. You're going absolutely nowhere for 9 weeks. Well, back then we didn't have book bags. And back then we had 6 books, and they were that thick, so I had to walk home. I didn't walk home. I rode the bus home with all of my books every single day for 9 weeks. You know what it reminded me? It reminded me not to open my mouth to my mom and talk back to her in a disrespectful way. She was my mama. She did things for me that nobody else ever did. She did things for me that only she could do. She did things for me that I could never repay her for. She was my mama. She taught me to respect her. You know, it was to a point that back in, I guess it was, we had just started going to church here, and honor was such a big thing in our house, and we watched what he wanted to watch. We ate what he wanted to eat and when he wanted to eat. We didn't sit in his chair. Now, see, that sounds crazy now, doesn't it? But that's the way it was in my house. Why? He's the one that provided protection for me and provision for me. I never had to worry if I was going to have a roof over my head. I never had to worry if I had food to eat. I never had to worry if anybody was going to harm me or hurt me. As a matter of fact, I had to be careful not to let him know if somebody was bothering me, because he was going to go after him. Because he said if a man won't take care of his family, he's not a man. That's the way he was. So that's the house that I grew up. So I think about things very differently. And I try really hard sometimes just to be a little lax with it. And then I realize I can't do it. That's why God put me where he put me, because this generation needs that, right, Miss Rhonda? That's what we were talking about it. They need us. They need people like us to reinforce that. Let them learn it at home. Let us reinforce it at school. Why? Because we want them to be a success. We want them to be everything that they could be. That's what sets us apart. That doesn't make, we're not better, but we just are different. And these kids will go above and beyond and do things that they never thought they could do. And if we don't teach them this, we are hindering them from being that and doing that. And I'm going to be held accountable and responsible for that. We had just moved here. I think Andy and I weren't married at the time. I guess we were dating. I don't know. And my dad's dad passed away. Well, I was not close to that family at all. I didn't have a relationship with them. As a matter of fact, I didn't care for my grandfather. I didn't care for him very much at all. He was one of those that I stayed away from him. And I don't think it's necessary for me to go into that, but I just stayed away from him. And so we went down. It was a 3-hour drive down there. I went to the funeral. And I was getting ready. I was in the bathroom, and I was getting dressed. And I had to go get something out of the car. And when I did, I stepped out from up under the carport. And you know how it was just sand. It was mud. It had been raining. And I had mud on the bottom of my shoes, so I left them right there at the doorstep up under the carport. And when I did, I just went on inside and finished getting dressed and getting ready. And the whole time there's a discussion going on inside that I'm not even aware of. And my grandfather looked at my mom and he said, I don't understand. He said, why is she down here and going to that funeral? I don't understand. Because he wasn't a very good man. Let me just put it to you that way. And she said, Daddy, you taught her to honor those no matter what they've done, but to honor the fact that that is her grandfather. That's her daddy's father. She's here to honor that position. And he didn't say anything. Next thing I know, I'll walk outside. I'm going to go get my shoes, and I don't see them. And I walk back in the house, and I look over to the side, and here is this grown man, 6'2", big man. He's not a small man. And he's over there, and he's wiping the mud off my shoes and cleaning my shoes. And I said, Hal, what are you doing? He said, I'm cleaning your shoes. And I said, you don't have to do that. He never looked up. He just kept wiping away. He said, I know I don't have to. I just want to. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I never forgot that. I never forgot having someone like that, and so grateful and so thankful to have someone like that in my life. And it made me who I am today. It definitely made me who I am today. So today when this happened, because nobody came in here looking for a particular person to lay hands on them. See, if you're looking for a person to lay hands on you, you're not going to get what you're looking for. You can't be looking for a person to do it. It doesn't come from a person, it comes from God. And the thing is that God will use the most unlikely people to do what He wants to do. He'll go in, and I think He just goes in somewhere and says, you see that one? She is so screwed up. She is so messed up. She is so insecure. She thinks so poorly of herself. Oh, she's a mess. She'll never make. I'm going to use her. Oh, look at him. He has messed up everything that he's ever done. I don't think he's succeeded at anything. I mean, he doesn't even know how to talk. He doesn't even know how to speak to people. He doesn't even know how to communicate with people. I'm going to use him and his teaching gift to bring much, much correction to the body. That's what God does. So if you think you're a mess, guess what? He's done put his stamp on you and said, I want that one right there. That one right there is the one I want. That one right there is going to do great things in my kingdom. That one right there is going to speak and people will be set free. That one right there will change things all around them, and people will be amazed at what I can do in their lives, because they're going to look back and say, I know what a mess they were. Yeah, but look at where they are now. They didn't have enough money to go to the store and buy any groceries, but by God, they were giving millions away. God can do whatever He wants to do with you and through you. All we have to do is put certain principles into our life and have them operating in our life. Do I wake up every day and feel like being honoring to everybody I'm around? No, I don't. There are days I don't feel like it. But my feelings don't have anything to do with it. And when I don't do it and when I do mess up, then guess what? I repent, because there's no condemnation. But I do have to repent. That means I have to change my way of thinking, my way of doing. Why? Because it's that important to the kingdom for me to have this principle operating in my life. See, there are other people that will come in this community and through this community. And they're going to need a touch from God, just like we got, just like that's what changed our lives. See, I was looking for a really, really long time. And I finally gave up. And I said, there is no such place. It does not exist. And then my mama came up here. And I said, no, I'm not going. It's just another one of those churches. You know, the flaky churches? I was not going to another flaky church. So she came home after being here, and her whole countenance was different. She was a different human being. And I looked at her and I said, I'm going with you next week. Because, see, I was at his bottom. I thought I was at the bottom then. I really wasn't. Later on, I got to the bottom. Many years later. It's okay. I follow the Holy Ghost. That's what I do. I got the notes here, and it's okay if I talk about it, if I don't. I want to encourage you today. You don't have to be perfect. God's not looking for perfect people. If He was, He wouldn't have any of us here because all of us are not perfect. But we can strive to be all that He's called us to be. And that's all we're responsible for. And we are responsible for that. And when we've been given someone a gift like what we have, and I say a gift, Apostle David, the gift that he has on the inside. You know, you have a gift on the inside of you. You just may not know what it is right now. We may not know what it is right now. Everything is not about teaching, preaching, singing. It's not all about that. We need people that can do administration. We need people that can, I'm going to tell you something. That's a needed and necessary thing. We got to have that. You know why? Because there's going to be a lot to administrate around here. And we're going to need all the help we can get. I don't even think I'll. So we've talked about honor. Let me talk to you a little bit why it is so important and how it can affect you, and not just you, but affect your children and your grandchildren. Honor is important. One of the greatest things that you can ever do is to teach your children to honor. Honor those in authority that are over them, whether you agree with them or not. Honor them. You know, I have to deal with a lot of situations sometimes, and some of the people that I work with, some of them honor and some of them don't. Okay? And usually the people that don't, they don't make it. I'm really pretty easy to do along with. I'll watch for a while, and I'll give people an opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. I am Miss Opportunity. But there comes a point in time when I will not give that opportunity any longer. And I usually look at them and say, hey, you know, do you think maybe you could smile? Do you think maybe you could interact with the kids just a little bit? Do you think maybe you could speak to the parents when they come in the door? You know, these are important qualities that we need here. This is important. And they look at you like, huh? Okay. It's important. It matters. It's important. So I want to talk to you, and it actually is in the Bible. So I will do some scripture. That makes y'all happy, doesn't it? Not going to just tell you stories. Are y'all getting anything out of this today? All right. I wanted to talk to you about how great you were and how wonderful you were and how much God loves you and how much He's got a plan for you. But I want you to understand the importance of honor. You know, one of the things Apostle Jonas said when, and it just struck a chord in me and I never forgot it. I've just never forgotten it. He said, you should see the way my people treat him. They treat him in such a way. They do, don't they, Nessa? It is unlike and I'm not saying we treat him bad or anything like that. See, I can say this today because he's not here. But it's different. There's a difference. And so I want to talk to you. Let's see. We'll go to Numbers. I won't go there because I don't know if I could say it and it not be offensive. So I don't want anybody to think I'm doing that because I'm not. Oh, okay. Well, I'm good at that. I do it all the time. I get the emails, I get the text, I get the whole 9 yards, you know. I get told what a horrible person I am on a regular basis. Not anymore, though. I'll be honest with you. I don't have that problem anymore. I had to fight really hard to get the environment and the atmosphere that we have out there at that daycare and at that school. And you think that it's something easy, but it's not easy. Just like Apostle David had to fight really hard to get the environment and the atmosphere of this church as it is today. It is not something that just happens. It is something that you have to fight and you have to contend for. It is something that you cannot just ease back and just think it's going to happen because it doesn't. It's something that you have to continue to watch over and guard over because if you don't, just like that, it will be gone. And all it takes is one person. One person doing this, one person doing that. And that's what I want to talk about now. I want to talk about that a little bit. And I want to talk about Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. It's kind of a funny story to me. It's not really funny, but it is funny to me. And this is, they're brother and sister, right? Y'all all know who Moses, Miriam, and Aaron is, right? Okay. So in chapter 12, it says, and Miriam, in verse 1, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. They didn't like that. Apparently they didn't like it because they were talking about it. They didn't agree with his choice of wife. They didn't like her. For whatever reason, they didn't like her. And so they talked about it. They murmured about the decision that he made. He was the one. He was the one that God talked to. Now, God talked to people in dreams and visions and different things, but he talked to Moses face to face. So his relationship with Moses was a little bit different. So if we'll go on and we'll read, and they said, hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken to us also? Well, how dare Moses make this decision without asking us first? This is interesting, isn't it? And the Lord heard it. He heard it. You know, God hears us when we murmur and complain. And we talk about people that are in leadership over us and they have to make decisions and we don't like the decision that they made. Apostle David, why did you tear that building down? I don't like the fact that you tore that building down. I have memories in that building. I do too. It smelled like mold and caught on fire. And, I got married in there, but I don't want the building because of that. I have a marriage. It was just a place where that actually happened. But what happened in me stays with me all the time. Yeah, I rolled on that floor, and yes, I got set free on that floor, and yes, I danced on that floor, and yes, I rejoiced on that floor. But that's in me. That's not in that building. That's a thing. That's something that can go away. We saw that it could go away, and God could still move. So it didn't matter if everybody agreed or didn't agree. Apostle David was the one that had to answer for God. And when God said, take the building down, he took the building down. Well, a lot of people didn't like that. They murmured and complained. They left. Okay, well, it just made his job a whole lot easier because he got rid of the murmurers and complainers. And he got the people who would stand with him, support him, and who honored him as the man of God that he was, and believed in him to carry us forth in the vision that God had placed in his heart. And the Lord heard it. Oh, God. When I read that, I was like, oh, God. Y'all don't ever do that. I felt like I needed to duck. Because you can act like you've never said anything. You can act like you've never murmured and complained. You can act like you've never been frustrated, but you're lying to yourself. But God knows. And so immediately I had to say, oh God, I'm sorry. I have murmured and complained. And then all of a sudden he brought me back to a situation back from 2007. And he said, you murmured and complained against them. Whether they were right or wrong, you murmured and complained against them. And I said, oh my God, forgive me. It didn't matter if it hurt or didn't hurt. The fact is, I murmured and complained. And God heard it. So I had to ask him to forgive me. That's something I just did, by the way. Now the man, Moses, was very meek. Now that's an interesting person. Probably the meekest person I've ever met probably is Miss Geraldine. So I wanted to get the description of that right. And meek, this is what it means spiritually. It's a person is not self-willed, not continually concerned with his or her own way, ideas, and wishes. They are willing to put themselves in second place and submit themselves to achieve what is good for others. Moses was meek. He was the meekest of all. He was the meekest above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And the Lord spoke suddenly unto Moses, and unto Aaron, and unto Miriam, and he said, I would be scared. He said, Come ye three unto the tabernacle of the congregation. And they three came out. And the Lord came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door. You know, God didn't do that back then. God meant business. God didn't like it. That's how serious it is about honor and dishonor. They were dishonoring the man that God had chosen and put there. If God had a problem with him marrying the Ethiopian woman, then God would have dealt with Moses himself. He didn't need Aaron and Moses to second guess him and run their mouth and talk about him and say things they shouldn't say. Why? Because God had a relationship with him and spoke face to face with him. What should Miriam and Aaron, what could they have done differently? Instead of opening their mouth against him, why not pray for him and his new wife? Father, I thank you that you're with them. I thank you that you're in their marriage. I thank you're in the midst of this situation. Father, I thank you that the love of God's been shed abroad in my heart by the Holy Ghost, and I'm ever ready to believe the best, to say the best, and think the best of others and myself at all times. The love of God, of course, they couldn't do that back then, but we can do that now. I'm saying that's what I have to do now. And the Lord spoke unto them. And this is what he did. So I won't read anymore, but I'll just tell you what he did. He was upset. And he didn't let them get away with that. Miriam got struck down with leprosy. Leprosy. And God said, Moses was like, God, please, please, please heal her. Don't let her be struck down with leprosy. Now, I'm paraphrasing. Y'all can go through and read the whole thing. But just to get through time. Don't, God, please. Please, God, don't. He was a meek man. He beseeched God. God heard him. And God said, well, you know what? If she had disrespected her father, he would have spit on her and put her outside for 7 days. That's how serious it was to disrespect and dishonor. And so she had leprosy for 7 days. And after that, she was healed. I bet Miriam didn't open her mouth. But one of the things about leprosy is that leprosy is something that, you know, it makes people stay away from you. And when you have that, it affects your nerves and things, and so you don't feel anything, and you don't, so you just, you don't feel anything. So let me ask you something. I have been in a service before. Have you ever been at a place and time when you walked into a service and it was just a pumping and everybody is into it? I mean, the music is going, the preaching and teaching is going, everything's going on, and you're not feeling a thing. I'm just asking, because I have. And so what did I have to do? I had to examine myself and ask myself the question, why? See, when you're in a situation like that, if I've got that offense in me, if I've got that hurt in me, if I've got that unwillingness to honor someone, then I'm not going to get what everybody else gets. I'm not going to feel what everybody else feels. And it's not up to me, or that's between you and God. You got to deal with that. I don't know how to say that any other way. You know, we can go on and we can look at Noah. And this is it. I'll finish up because I want you to understand the importance when it comes to your children and why it has something to do with your children and how important it is to God. You know, Noah had just gotten off the ark, 40 days, 40 nights on a boat with all kinds of animals and his whole family. After about 2 hours with our whole family, we're ready to go home. Thanksgiving is coming up. Everybody here knows what I'm talking about. See, everybody just kind of looks and laughs because you know. Everybody's got that one crazy person in your family. And if you're in my family, you've got more than one. And so you're just waiting to see what's going to happen. But you sure are ready for it to be over. Well, Noah had been on that boat for 40 days and 40 nights. And I imagine by then he had had all he could take. And he got off that boat, and when he got off that boat, they had to do some things on the earth, And back then they had vineyards. So they had wine. And they had that was not necessarily like what we see it today, so we don't need to even be thinking about it like this. But in this one particular instance, and I'm talking about honor, and I talked about, he is a man, and he does have flesh. I have flesh. I don't do everything right all the time. I'm not going to do everything right all the time. I wish I did. And I'm really hard on myself because I don't. I get really upset with myself because I mess up. I get really disappointed in myself because I don't quite measure up. My expectations that I have for myself are so high, I don't think anybody could ever attain that. They're unrealistic at times. But the fact is, I still have flesh, and I make mistakes, and I do things wrong sometimes. Well, Noah was sleeping, or I don't know, he's passed out is what he was. He was in his tent, and I think it was Ham that went in there. And Ham walked in that tent, and he saw Noah. Noah wasn't out in front of everybody. He was in his own tent. And he walked in, and he stepped out, and he saw Noah. He was naked. He was uncovered. He saw his flesh. And he walked out, and he told everybody what he saw. And Ham had 2 brothers. And what they did is they took their blanket. Y'all know this story. And they didn't go in there looking. They went in backwards. Because they weren't looking at the flesh. And they covered him. That's how we honor sometimes. Honor him. And the thing is that Noah, he had blessings in his mouth. I mean, you think about it. God picked him. God chose him. He was the only one. God picked him. I'd be careful to say something about Noah. I'd be careful to say something about Moses. I'd be careful to say something about Apostle David. I'd be careful. I'd be careful to say something about Anessa. I'd be careful to say something about Pastor Fred and Pastor Laura. I'd be afraid to say something about James. I'd be afraid. God picked them. God chose them. And so guess what he did? He spoke blessings over the 2 that went in and covered him. And those blessings were not just over them. Really, it was over their children and their children's children. Ham, on the other hand, he didn't curse him, but he cursed his son and his children and his children. See, God takes honor and dishonor very seriously. And if we'll just take the time to just do a readjustment sometimes and look at ourselves and say, wait a minute, I missed it there. You don't have to go tell somebody. Just make the readjustment. Just say, God, I'm sorry, I missed it there. Don't murmur and complain because, see, this is the thing. When we took that building down, we didn't know COVID was coming. And if we had kept that building, we would not have been able to cover the cost and the expense of that building. Isn't that right? See, we didn't understand why. God didn't tell him why. God just told him to do it, and he had to be obedient. But people murmured and complained, and what he was doing is he was hearing from God. And because he was hearing from God, now we have this place, and now we have a school, and now we're going to build a new sanctuary so that more people can come, so that more people can come for school, so that more people can have jobs, so that more people can be in the sanctuary. We have more and more and more to do. What? Because he listened to God. And all we need to do is honor the man that God put here for us to honor. And if there's something wrong that needs to be fixed in him, God will show him what needs to be fixed. He will take care of that. It's not up to us to do it. So I just want to encourage you today. You say, what does this have to do with my children? Teach them to honor. Start at home. They need to honor you and honor their father. If they don't honor you at home, when they come into school, they don't honor us, and then we make them. They get in trouble with us. They might have silent lunch. But then later on, that's just going to lead to something else. One day, they're going to come in contact with the law. So you better teach them now to honor those in authority so that they don't have problems later on in life. Now, things happen, and they do. I'm not saying that, but start with that. I'm not saying that every law enforcement is a good person. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying do that. You know, what are you going to do if they go and get a job and then they don't understand about honor and then they just smart off at their job, at their boss? I never got to do that. I don't do that now. If I did that, he'd tell me, you can go get your stuff and you can go to the house. And don't come back. Yeah. That's what he'd tell me. Don't set them up to fail. Set them up to succeed. And it's just the small things. Just the small things. Push the chair up under the table. It's a small thing. But those small things matter. All right. Well, I love you guys. And I appreciate y'all.